So the next time you are sitting at a stoplight and this brand new cherry red Ferrari pulls up right next to you, don't feel a pang of jealousy.
Right, definitely don't.
Yeah, because the data suggests you are probably just looking at a highly leveraged financial facade. Today, we are diving into a really fascinating stack of sources. We've got Thomas Stanley and William Danko's landmark research in The Millionaire Next Door, some behavioral psychology papers on wealth accumulation, and even the hardcore spreadsheets powering the modern FIRE movement.
Which are intense, by the way.
Oh, they are. So our mission for this deep dive into the source material is to basically strip away the cultural mythology of what it means to be rich and to isolate the actual mechanics of financial freedom for you.
Yeah, and the overarching theme across all these sources is this jarring disconnect between perception and reality.
Exactly. I mean, that luxury car you're looking at is often just an incredibly expensive tombstone for the driver's future freedom.
It really is. It's an illusion that keeps the middle class totally trapped. We have this culturally ingrained idea that wealth equals high consumption.
Like spending a lot means you have a lot.
Right. If you earn $500,000 a year, the expectation is that you just immediately scale your lifestyle to match. You get the designer clothes, the oversized mortgage, the country club
They
membership.
play the part.
You play the part. But when you actually analyze the balance sheets of real self-made millionaires, that glitzy image just vanishes. Real wealth isn't measured by what you spend to project status to the outside world.
It's invisible, basically.
Completely. It is measured strictly by the income-producing assets you acquire and how ruthlessly you manage them.
Which totally flips the script on what a millionaire actually looks like in the wild. I mean, according to Stanley and Danko's data, the average millionaire is essentially invisible to you and me.
Yeah, they really are.
They live in middle-class, blue-collar neighborhoods. They've been married to the same partner for decades. And get this, that partner is frequently even more frugal than they are.
That's a huge point. The whole family unit is on board.
Right, we're talking about people who are statistically more likely to buy a $40 pair of shoes than a $500 pair.
Exactly. And when it comes to vehicles, less than a quarter of them drive brand new cars.
Wow.
Yeah, many haven't purchased a car of any kind in over 4 years. They are actively rejecting that lifestyle creep we talked about. But the reason they do this, it goes far deeper than just, being cheap.
It's strategic.
Highly strategic. It's a maneuver to control their tax burden. The data reveals that the truly wealthy keep their realized, meaning taxable income, to under 7% of their total net worth.
Okay, wait, I want to pause on that 7% metric.
Hmm.
Because if you're stuck in a high consumption cycle, keeping your taxable income that low seems basically impossible.
It is impossible.
Right, like if you have a massive mortgage and a Ferrari lease, you have to realize hundreds of thousands of dollars in income every single year just to keep the lights on. And then you're paying top-tier income tax on every single dollar you pull down.
And that is the trap right there.
Hmm.
So a highly paid specialist physician might earn $400,000 a year, which sounds incredibly rich.
Sure, yeah.
But if they require $390,000 just to maintain their curated image, they are what researchers actually classify as asset poor.
Because there's nothing left over.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Every time they need more money to fund their consumption, they trigger a taxable event. The invisible millionaire, on the other hand, lives on just a tiny fraction of their wealth.
They just let it sit there.
They let their capital compound quietly in unrealized gains, completely sheltered from annual income taxes. They aren't constantly interrupting the compounding process just to buy depreciating liabilities.
I hear that, and the math obviously makes sense. But I look at that lifestyle, and I kind of have to ask, what is the actual utility of all this money?
How do you mean?
Well, if you have $8 million in Vanguard index funds and you're still walking around in $40 shoes and driving a 10-year-old Honda, aren't you just hoarding it at that point? What's the point?
Well, only if you define the utility of money strictly as the ability to consume goods.
Okay.
The wealthy derive a completely different psychological reward from their capital. They don't get a dopamine hit from a luxury watch, They get it from the absolute certainty that they don't have to answer to anyone.
So it's about freedom.
Exactly. They are buying leverage, optionality, and security. They value the asset itself way more than the lifestyle the asset could theoretically purchase for them.
So it's fundamentally a psychological gain then.
Yeah.
The dividing line isn't who gets a slightly better interest rate. It's the internal operating system of the individual.
That's a great way to put it.
And our sources actually map this out using the Big Five personality traits, which I found fascinating. When researchers analyzed self-made millionaires versus people who inherited their wealth, the self-made group spiked in some very specific categories.
The divergence there is really striking, especially when you look at conscientiousness and emotional stability.
Right.
Conscientiousness translates directly to meticulous financial planning, and a really high capacity for delayed gratification. But emotional stability is arguably the most critical trait when we start looking at market mechanics.
Because of how people react to stress.
Yes. Just think about how the average retail investor reacts during a severe market correction.
Oh, they panic. Completely. They check their portfolio on their phone like 12 times a day, and eventually they just sell at the bottom just to stop the pain.
Precisely. In behavioral economics, there is this concept called the disposition effect. It dictates that investors have a psychological tendency to sell assets that have increased in value way too early.
Just to lock in the win, right? To feel smart.
Exactly, to feel smart. While at the same time, they hold on to depreciating, losing assets far too long because they just cannot emotionally accept the loss.
Wow.
And the data shows that 45% of wealthy investors still battle this bias. High emotional stability is basically the firewall that prevents you from blowing up a decade of compounding out of pure panic or ego.
It's the ability to look at a 30% portfolio drop and just do absolutely nothing.
Yeah, just sit on your hands. But there's also openness and extroversion, which help them adapt to new financial innovations and build powerful networks.
But there is a paradox here that I'm trying to wrap my head around. The data also highlights high-risk tolerance and the key trait of the self-made wealthy. If these individuals are highly conscientious, deeply frugal, and constantly building margins of safety to survive market crashes, how are they simultaneously risk takers?
Because we often confuse absolute safety with financial security, and they are definitely not the same thing.
Okay, unpack that.
So the middle-class mindset prioritizes absolute safety, keeping cash in a low-yield savings account or staying in a stagnant career purely for that predictable biweekly paycheck.
Right, avoiding volatility at all costs.
Yes, but the self-made wealthy understand that avoiding all short-term volatility actually guarantees the ultimate long-term risk, which is total financial stagnation.
Because inflation just slowly bleeds you to death.
Exactly. So instead, the wealthy take calculated asymmetric risks.
Meaning they look for bets where the floor is solidly built, but the ceiling is completely open.
Yes, an asymmetric risk strictly caps the downside while leaving the upside theoretically infinite. Starting a side business with a few $1,000s of disposable capital is an asymmetric risk. If it fails, you lose a known, trivial amount. But if it scales, it changes your life.
So frugality isn't about avoiding risk. Frugality is actually what provides the liquid capital required to take those asymmetric bets without risking your basic survival.
You nailed it.
That reframes Morgan Housel's concept perfectly. He argues for a blend of sensible optimism and paranoia.
Right, you need the optimism to invest aggressively, but the paranoia to build an emergency fund so robust that no economic shock can ever force you to sell your assets at a loss.
But this leads us to probably the most tragic irony in our entire stack of research.
Oh, the EOC.
Yeah. We've established that the superpower of the self-made millionaire is this psychological grit, the extreme conscientiousness, the calibrated risk tolerance. What happens when these hardworking, self-made parents try to use their wealth to make life easier for their kids?
They systematically destroy the very traits that created the wealth in the first place. The research literature calls this economic outpatient care, or EOC.
Which is such a clinical term for something so damaging.
It really is. It describes the phenomenon of wealthy parents providing regular, substantial financial subsidies to their adult children. Down payments on houses, massive monthly allowances, paying off their credit cards.
It feels akin to doing your child's math homework for them every single night. You think you're helping them avoid stress, but really you're just giving them the diploma without the education.
That is a perfect analogy.
When they finally face the real world, they get completely crushed because they just haven't built the cognitive muscles to solve the problems themselves.
That's the thing. But the reality of EOC is even more insidious than just failing a test. It literally alters their entire neurological reward system.
Wow, really?
Yeah. When you subsidize an adult's lifestyle, you short-circuit the connection between effort and reward. The authors of The Millionaire Next Door found that adults who receive EOC consistently become underachievers compared to their peers who receive nothing.
Because there's no drive.
Right. As the book bluntly puts it, it is much easier to spend other people's money than dollars that are self-generated.
Because there's no friction. I mean, when you trade your own blood, sweat, and time for a dollar, you treat that dollar with immense respect. When it just magically appears in your checking account via a wire transfer from your parents, it's just monopoly money. You haven't internalized its value at all.
Exactly. And the statistical outcome is that these subsidized children become high-volume consumers.
Trying to look like their parents.
Yes. They try to mimic the status of their parents by buying the luxury cars and the country club memberships. They are replicating the superficial result of wealth without ever understanding the agonizing, disciplined process required to actually generate it.
They consume the principal rather than living off the yield.
Which is a mathematical disaster.
So relying on inherited wealth is a developmental trap. You basically have to build the engine yourself. But that brings up the timeline. The traditional narrative we are all sold is that you work until you are 65, you collect your gold watch, and then you finally get to rest.
The standard path?
Right. But our sources on the FIRE movement, Financial Independence, Retire Early, they completely dismantle that timeline. They've turned retirement from a biological age into a strict mathematical equation driven by one single variable.
The savings rate.
The savings rate.
It is the fulcrum of the entire FIRE philosophy. Let's look at it. Most traditional financial planners tell you to save, what, 10% of your income?
Yeah, 10, maybe 15 if you're ambitious.
Right. Let's break down the math of why that takes 40 years. If you earn $100,000, save 10%, and live on the remaining 90%, your savings rate is fundamentally misaligned with your consumption rate.
Okay, how so?
At 10%, you have to work for 9 full years just to save enough capital to cover one single year of your living expenses.
9 years of labor for 1 year of freedom. That is a brutal exchange rate.
It is. But what happens when you push that savings rate to the extreme? The FIRE community frequently talks about a 75% savings rate.
Okay, let's unpack this. A 75% savings rate sounds completely impossible for a normal person. But go on with the math.
This is where the math creates a massive paradigm shift. Let's use that same $100,000 income. If you radically restructure your life to save 75%, you are only living on $25,000 a year. Think about the ratio change there. In a single year of work, you are banking $75,000. Since your lifestyle only costs $25,000, that 1 year of work just bought you 3 full years of financial freedom.
Hold on, let me process that. At a 10% savings rate, it takes 9 years to buy 1 year of freedom. But at a 75% savings rate, it takes just 4 months of work to buy a full year of freedom.
Yes.
The math completely inverts.
It does completely invert. And notice that we haven't even factored in compound interest yet. In the early stages of wealth building, compound interest is mathematically irrelevant compared to your brute force savings rate.
Interesting.
At a 75% rate, you can accumulate enough capital to cover your expenses indefinitely in under 10 years. And this timeline relies heavily on the famous 4% rule, which was established by William Bengen back in 1994.
Right. So Bengen modeled historical market data and found that if you save 25 times your annual expenses, you can withdraw 4% of your portfolio in year 1, adjust that dollar amount for inflation every year after, and theoretically never deplete your principal, regardless of what the market does.
That was the foundational premise, yes.
Yeah.
However, our more recent economic sources argue for significant caution here.
Why is that?
Well, economists like Carson Jeske point out a major flaw in applying Bengen's rule to the FIRE movement. You see, Bengen modeled a traditional 30-year retirement. If you achieve FIRE at age 35, you are staring down a 50 or 60-year timeline.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a huge difference.
Over that duration, sequence of returns risk becomes the dominant threat to your survival.
Sequence of returns risk. This is crucial for you listening. This is the danger of retiring right into the teeth of a brutal bear market, right?
Exactly. If the market crashes by 25% in the first 2 years of your retirement, and you are actively withdrawing 4% to buy groceries and pay rent, you are forcing yourself to sell off a huge volume of shares at rock bottom prices.
Well, locking in the losses.
Permanently. You permanently impair your portfolio. When the market eventually recovers, you just don't have enough shares left to catch the updraft.
That's terrifying.
It is. Because of this specific risk over a 50-year horizon, Jeske argues that 4% is dangerously optimistic, and early retirees should actually target a maximum withdrawal rate of 3.25 to 3.5%.
which means you need an even larger initial portfolio to generate the same income. Now, let's inject a dose of reality into this 75% savings rate, because I look at that number, and frankly, it feels mathematically impossible for anyone earning a median salary who lives in a major U.S. city.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, if rent is $2,000 a month and groceries are up 30%, how does anyone hit a 75% savings rate without resigning themselves to a miserable, deprived existence?
Well, if you assume all other variables remain fixed, it is impossible for the median earner. You just cannot outfrugal structural cost of living increases.
Right.
The only way to make the math work without living in absolute misery is to radically alter the denominator of your financial equation. You have to change your geography.
Geographic arbitrage.
Yeah.
Popularized by Tim Ferriss, but the FIRE community has basically weaponized it.
They really have. Geo-arbitrage is the strategic decision to untether your income from your location. You maintain a high currency income, perhaps through remote tech work, consulting, or an online business, but you physically relocate to a jurisdiction with a drastically lower cost of living.
Somewhere where your dollar stretches way further.
Exactly. We are seeing a massive migration of FIRE practitioners leaving coastal U.S. cities for places like Mexico, Portugal, Colombia, or Thailand. They can slash their housing, healthcare, and daily expenses to a fraction of their previous baseline,
Instantly pushing their savings rate into that 75% territory without sacrificing their quality of life.
Exactly.
It's basically treating your personal finances like a multinational corporation. You are offshoring your operational expenses to maximize your profit margins.
That's exactly what it is.
But, just like a corporation, offshoring comes with intense regulatory and tax friction. I mean, you can't just pack a laptop and expect the U.S. tax code to leave you alone, especially when it comes to accessing retirement accounts early.
Oh, definitely not. That is the highest hurdle for early retirees. The U.S. government explicitly designs tax-advantaged accounts like 401k and traditional IRAs to keep you in the workforce. If you try to withdraw those funds before age 59 and a half, you are hit with a brutal 10% early withdrawal penalty on top of regular income taxes. For someone retiring at 40, their capital is essentially locked behind a regulatory firewall.
So how do they get to their money? Do they just eat the penalty?
Never. Remember that conscientiousness trait we talked about?
They plan a way around it.
Exactly. They plan complex legal evasion routes years in advance. The most prominent mechanism is the Roth IRA conversion ladder.
How does that work?
Here's how it works mechanically. You convert a specific portion of your traditional pre-tax IRA into a Roth IRA. You pay the income tax on that conversion out of pocket today. But here is the catchness. The IRS mandates a 5-year waiting period before you can withdraw that newly converted principal penalty-free.
So if you convert $40,000 today, you can't touch it for 5 years. That means you have to build a rolling 5-year pipeline of conversions, and you need a completely separate pool of liquid cash, like a standard brokerage account, just to survive that initial 5-year waiting period.
Exactly. It requires immaculate cash flow engineering.
Wow.
Alternatively, they might use the 72T rule, which allows you to take penalty-free withdrawals at any age, but you are legally locked into a strict, mathematically rigid withdrawal schedule for at least 5 years or until you turn 59 and a half.
And if you mess it up?
If you alter the payment amount by a single dollar, the IRS retroactively applies the penalties.
It demands absolute
Right.
precision. And, even if you navigate the tax labyrinth flawlessly, there is still the American healthcare cliff. If you walk away from your corporate job at age 40, you have a 25-year gap before you qualify for Medicare.
And that gap can completely obliterate a 3.5% withdrawal rate. The data we reviewed from the Kaiser Family Foundation is pretty sobering.
Yeah, share that number.
For a 62-year-old early retiree, an unsubsidized Affordable Care Act plan can carry a monthly premium exceeding $1,116.
Over $13,000 a year just for the premium before you even pay a deductible. If your FIRE plan is built on withdrawing $40,000 a year, healthcare alone consumes a third of your gross income. The math just breaks.
Which is why the community developed sub-strategies to hedge against this specific variable. Consider Barista FIRE.
Right, which sounds like a joke, but it's not.
It's often misunderstood as just a desire to stay busy by making lattes. In reality, it is a surgical mathematical strategy.
How so?
By working a low-stress, part-time job that explicitly offers corporate health benefits like Starbucks, you completely remove the catastrophic risk of healthcare premiums from your portfolio withdrawals.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Your investments cover your housing and food, while the part-time job provides the health insurance and protects you from sequence of returns risk during market downturns because you aren't drawing down as much capital.
It's all about mitigating risk and protecting the compounding process. So, bringing this all together for you listening, the ultimate realization we've pulled from these sources is that the chasm between the wealthy and the middle class is not fundamentally about intelligence.
No, not at all.
And it's certainly not about driving the right car. It is a profound structural shift in how you view the utility of a dollar. The middle class views money as a ticket. A ticket to buy luxury, to buy status, to buy a lifestyle that signals success to strangers.
Yes.
But the self-made wealthy view money exclusively as a tool. And the only thing they're interested in building with that tool is leverage, autonomy, and time.
I think Morgan Housel captured that sentiment perfectly when he wrote that the highest intrinsic value of money is its ability to give you control over your own time. The ultimate metric of wealth is waking up in the morning and saying, I can do whatever I want today. So, the provocative thought I would leave you with as you analyze your own financial trajectory is this. Look at your current income and ask yourself, is your paycheck actually buying your freedom for tomorrow? Or is it just paying the ransom on a lifestyle you don't even have the time to enjoy today?
Paying the ransom on a lifestyle you don't even have time to enjoy, that is a heavy, necessary question to sit with. So the next time you see that cherry red Ferrari, remember the math beneath the paint job. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. We'll see you next time.